Hi, and happy Apple Week. We are going to start our Apple Week this week. Today, we're going to start it, and we are going to read this apple story, the biggest apple ever. All right? And that apple looks pretty big to me on the front cover, don't you think? Um, so this is by Stephen Kroll. So Stephen is the author, and authors, what do? Write the words, yes, and illustrated by Jenny Bassett. What does the illustrator do? Draws the pictures. Right. Okay, so here we go. What do we think this book is going to be about based on the front cover? And the title is The Biggest Apple Ever. You think this book will be about unicorns? Probably not. You think it's going to be about pizza? Probably not. What about apples? Could it be about apples? That would make sense. It's got an apple on the cover. The title has apple in it. So this book might be about apples. Let's see. Once there were two mice who fell in love with the same apple pie, but you had to be there to see how it happened. On opening day at Mouseville School, the principal, Mr. Mouser, made an announcement. We will be learning about apples this fall, and to get things started, we will have a contest. Whoever brings in the biggest apple to his teacher will win a special prize. The judging will take place on Friday. Good luck to everyone. I have an apple tree in my backyard, said Penelope. I bet it has really big apples. There's an apple tree across from my house, said James. I'm going to climb it as soon as I get home. I don't have any apple tree, said Clayton, the house mouse, but I'm going to find Mr. Mousley the biggest apple ever. No, you're not, said his friend Desmond, the field mouse. I am. Oh, yeah, said Clayton. Yeah, said Desmond. Uh-oh. They're best buddies, but are they getting along? Doesn't sound like it. All the way home on the school bus, Clayton and Desmond talked about the contest. Maybe I could grow an apple tree with really big apples, said Clayton. It takes too long, said Desmond. I heard Mrs. Mousley say 6 years. I'll think of something, said Clayton. So will I, said Desmond. When Clayton got off the bus, he sneaked back into town to see what Penelope and James were up to. Penelope had come down from her tree. She was carrying 2 tiny apples. James was still up in the tree across the street. He was picking very small apples. Clayton knew he'd seen bigger ones at the market. Market is just a fancy word for store, right? At the grocery store. When Desmond came by a little later, he realized the same thing. So far, Penelope and James have small apples. The next day at school, Penelope and James brought in their tiny apples. No one else had brought in anything. Mrs. Mousley cleared her throat. Class, we have a lot of work to do to start this year, but because we are learning about apples and having an apple contest, we will go to Barnaby's orchard this afternoon. Everyone got excited. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Clayton. I'm going to find the winning apple, said Desmond. At the orchard, Mrs. Mousley pointed out all the different kinds of apples. Then everyone disappeared into the trees looking for a winner. Clayton walked down one row, craning his neck. Desmond walked down another row, craning his neck. Then Clayton saw what he thought was a really big apple. It was a little too high to reach, but he stretched for it. At that moment, Desmond saw the very same apple on the very same tree. He stretched for it too, and they bumped heads and fell down. I think we should bring this apple in together, said Clayton. No one said we couldn't, said Desmond. So an orchard must be somewhere where apples grow, right? Apples are growing on the trees. So an orchard must be where they have lots of apple trees, and that's where they grow. There's apple orchards around where we live. Let's see what they do next. But when they got back to the bus, James had an apple that was even bigger. The apple was so big he could hardly carry it. Clayton and Desmond looked at each other. What would they do now? Oh man, they thought they had won. But now they see that James has a bigger apple. What will they do? That night at dinner, Clayton explained the problem to his dad. Said Dad. Apples don't come in too many sizes. Do you think you'll find a bigger one? I don't know, said Clayton. Well, then maybe James will win the prize this time, and it's okay if he does. Over at Desmond's house, Uncle Vernon said exactly the same thing. So they're telling the kids that it's okay to not win every time. It's okay to let your friend have the bigger apple. But Clayton and Desmond were still determined. The next afternoon, they met at Barnaby's orchard. They picked 2 huge baskets of apples, but nothing they found was bigger than the apple that James had picked. You know, said Clayton, I think Dad was right. This time James gets to win. But we've got all these apples. Why don't we bake a big apple pie? Desmond laughed. Great! Let's bake the biggest apple pie ever, and we'll make it for our class. Clayton nodded, and I think I know where we'll find a pie pan that's just big enough. The following afternoon, Desmond arrived at Clayton's house with Uncle Vernon. Everything's packed up and ready to go. It's all in Dad's truck. Where are we going? Desmond asked. You'll find out in a minute, said Clayton. There's all their apples and everything they need. Wonder where they're going. Dad drove with Clayton and Desmond beside him in the front seat. Uncle Vernon stayed in the back with the apples and all the other ingredients for the great apple pie. As they came around a corner, Desmond gasped. Tony's Pizza? Of course, said Clayton. What could be better than a giant pizza pan? Why do they need a giant pizza pan? What are they making? Their apple pie. They're gonna use the pizza pan for their apple pie. Mr. Tony greeted them at the door. Welcome, welcome. We are ready to begin. And so they got to work making the dough for the crust, kneading it, rolling it out half into a big circle, and spreading it over the deep dish pan. Then everyone peeled and sliced the apples, mixed together the sugar and spices, and spread the rest of the dough on top. Wow, said Clayton and Desmond when they were finished. Wow, wow, wow. An hour, said Mr. Tony. Give me an hour. The giant pan just fit into his huge oven. So they worked together to make a nice big pie. The next day was Friday. Who would have the largest apple? James, of course, and Mr. Mouser handed him the prize, a cheddar cheese apple. Mrs. Mousley looked surprised. Clayton? Desmond? Nothing from you? The two of them grinned. At the same moment, the classroom door flew open. In came Clayton's dad, Uncle Vernon, and Mr. Tony, struggling to carry the giant pie by themselves. So there comes the giant apple pie that they baked. How wonderful, said Mrs. Mousley. That's the biggest apple pie ever. We made it for the whole class, said Clayton. All of us together, said Desmond. They shared a high five, and everyone in the class had a very big slice. Well, that turned out to be a cute story, right? Those two friends kind of bumped heads at first, but then they figured out that it's okay to not win. You don't have to be the best and the biggest and get the prize every single time, right? All right, friends, I hope you enjoy Apple Week this week. I love you. See you later.